Hi, everyone. Okay. I think we'll get started. Right, Tarun?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just to confirm, you can still see my screen, right? Good. All right. So let's get started. Um, Welcome, everyone. I'm Harjot, and with me is Tarun, Tarun. We are the co-founders of 𝗂𝘆𝗶𝗴𝗵 AI, and today we are excited to kick off the session with on how to make AI work for your business. Not just as a buzzword, but as an actual tool you can actually use in your organization for various purposes. Tarun, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Hajot. So I think today what we're gonna do is we're gonna just skip up all that hoopla of what AI is and everything, but covering more of the practical aspect of how you can actually use AI in B2B world, which is business to business world. And in fact, stay tuned with us because at the end of the day, we also have certain demos being lined up with us.
Thank you. So, moving on. Uh, to say the least, the shift is real. And let's start with the big picture. In a business these days, they're the ones who are leveraging AI in the right way. They are not just using it as a chatbot or as a lonely agent somewhere lying around in the organization. Instead, they are using it for automating real tasks. They are changing how decisions are getting made, how services are being rendered, how the customers are engaging with the organization. And we're not even talking about like a futuristic moonshot. We're talking about real use cases as of today. Um, to give you a few examples, content generation, personalized recommendations, predictive insights, and something which is like right here and right now.
And in fact, this is one of the big shifts, Harjot, that we are seeing in the industry, specifically ever since the large language models came way back in November 22. The businesses are now taking it much more seriously. It's no longer a tool, but it's an integrated portion of their business. And we are actually seeing the serious gains that business are achieving if they are able to implement and utilize AI properly. But before we go further, uh, maybe we can just quickly define what AI is all about. So if we talk about AI, it pretty much replicates what human intelligence is. So it's about teaching the systems from the data, identifying patterns, making decisions, and so on and so forth. If we take AI as a whole, it has various aspects like machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, and in fact, those large language models, likes of ChatGPTs and Gemini and Claude, are something that we all are aware of. That is something that has taken AI altogether to a different level.
Exactly, Tarun. Completely agreed with you. And but as the audience is going to see, AI goes way beyond the regular usage of AI that we see. Maybe in 70-80% of implementations, like just chatbots and all. So moving further ahead, let's talk about the traditional versus AI decision making. Tarun, do you want to take
Yeah.
this?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So if you look at the whole traditional, I mean, this is where that whole big shift is all about, right? So if we talk about the traditional uh, way of making decisions, it used to be pretty much rule-based. What do we mean by rule-based is that there are certain logics that are being written. So if you have something X, then do Y. If you have to do this, then do this and do that. So there used to be those if and else and those kind of logical statements and business processes through which it used to work. But howsoever, if you look at human, and that is where artificial intelligence pretty much mimics human intelligence, is because when you see, it takes the context. And its decisions are not based upon rules, but various patterns, histories, and are dynamic in nature. So it's though you can give the guidelines under which it can perform, but based upon the historic data, based upon the various data, based upon the context that it is being given, it takes those decisions, right? So, so let's take a very simple example. Say if there was a system which takes and identifies that what are the fraud in a system, a bank system. So if there's any transaction which is above $10,000, mark it as a fraudulent. Now, this is what the traditional systems were. But if we start looking at new age AI-based kind of systems, that is where it will start looking at various patterns. So even if the transaction is not $10,000, but those are, single dollars or cents, but it has been happening frequently in a certain pattern over a period of time, it would actually be much more than $10,000. And a rule-based system would never be able to track that. But whereas AI identifying those patterns, like a human, would see that, yes, these are the transactions that happen in certain time of a day, and this is how it happens, it will be able to identify that, yes, these are the fraudulent transactions. And that is where the big differentiator between the traditional decision making and AI decision making comes into play.
Yeah, exactly. And the beauty is that the great thing about AI is that it can train itself. It can feed on its own data. It can be trained further and further, and it gets better the more you use it. So, which completely is a game changer when it comes down to, the traditional versus AI-based decision making. And moving on, let's now talk about the uh, how to implement AI, the best practices. But before we even jump there, let's talk about some common missteps. And we want to shift gears and see what are the landmines that we need to avoid when we are talking about utilizing AI. Because the fastest way to lose momentum with AI is to fall into some very commonly known traps, which many at times happens due to lack of experience, lack of motivation, lack of the right planning for AI, for implementing AI. And we have basically grouped them all in a few themes. So I'm just going to go deeper into it. So let's talk about, before we talk about what AI in business should be, let's talk about what it should not be. So those don'ts are really important to understand, because then you can really segregate and understand these things, the implementation better. So let's dive in. The first thing is, many a times we see implementations where AI is just a wrapper on ChatGPT or Gemini and things like that. And it's just a chatbot running some queries on the data that it's been given. Now, if your entire AI strategy is about, hey, let's install ChatGPT and the wrapper, then we definitely have some work to do in measuring the right outputs that needs to come out of your AI implementation. Now, don't take me wrong, chatbots are powerful. They're really a big value add in certain use cases. But we also have to understand that AI's real value also lies in automating processes by them becoming part of your workflow, analyzing documents, predicting trends, and so many other things. And moving on to other than chatbots, sometimes the terminology agents keeps coming up, in the AI world a lot. And sometimes it's taken as a wrong step to just implement AI on its own as a separate system, as an ad hoc system, an agent which keeps working on its own and never a part of a real proper design. And what it leads to is that eventually it leads to multiple disconnected systems or agents doing their own toolings. And when you're doing that, there's not a cohesive output coming out of it, which basically really gives AI a bad rep when you start working in a very disjointed fashion. Uh, Moving on to governance. So there is always this notion in everyone's minds that, hey, AI can work on its own. There will be no governance. There are risks attached to it. Yes, there are risks attached to it, but it's the same way like with any system, that you need to be able to utilize the right design with AI, so you know that AI is really transparent. It cannot be a black box really. So we need to be able to understand where, especially in regulation, in the landscape that we have, that governance is really important. Lastly, but not the least, that do not run AI as a separate system. If you're asking your users to, while they have three different systems to work on a daily basis, and then you're giving them another system to work on just to utilize AI, that basically would lead to a lack of adoption. People would use it maybe as a novelty feature, but they will never become real in-depth, day-to-day part of their lives. And that's when organizations are realizing that AI implementation is failing. Um, so a lot about what it should not be. Then maybe you should take up what it should be.
Oh, yeah, thanks a lot, Ajot. So, in fact, it's a five-pillar approach that generally we take it up on what should AI be. Though we'll go in detail in each one of them, but this is pretty much the flip side of what Harjot said. Making AI transparent, making AI a part of your business process, as well as make it more or less frictionless and not a separate system altogether. So having said that, the whole thought process is that the adoption of the new technologies, instead of taking it as a separate tool altogether, is well integrated in your day-to-day working and in your day-to-day system, so that it acts more as a helper rather than a system where user needs to get trained on and it's a separate tool altogether.
Yep. And if you focus on these best practices, you'll find that your the user satisfaction with your systems is way much higher. The adoption becomes much more easier. There's a better ROI that comes, and everything in terms of AI implementation is more measurable, because value add is visible, is more is it's more holistic all across the organization.
So I think this is where the very first aspect or the very first pillar comes into play, that AI should be a part of your business process. So say if you have a particular process or something, say be it for hiring or be it for your CRM or help desk or HR, any of these, right? The thing is that in that whole particular series of business processes, where does AI fit in? What are the places where AI can actually take decisions or at least make recommendations so that it becomes much more easier for humans to navigate it through? And that is where the AI needs to be part of the whole business process. So, Hajar, if you can go to the next slide here. So that is where we are talking about a lot of these agents instead of a separate chatbot or tools where you keep on asking. There's a one system which is a separate tool on AI, or there is a chatbot system and others, and then you already have other tools like your HR system, CRM, and others, and you're continuously transactioning between the two. And whereas at the end of the day, the chatbots or the LL large language models don't get the whole context because most of the context is sitting in a separate tool altogether. And that is where all those whole disjoint happens. There's a friction and the results that you get are not that good. There are hallucinations and so on and so forth. And that is where the whole AI, instead of having chatbots and others as a separate system altogether, why don't you build it within those system itself? And again, when we talk about building it up, we are not talking about that you need to be dependent upon those third-party softwares or tools or the product owners, but pretty much building on top of it and integrating it with your existing HR, CRMs, or any of these tools, so that for the end user, it's pretty much seamless. And that is where the whole frictionless AI comes into play.
And it's like spell check. It's always there, always helping. You don't even come to know of it. It becomes part of your daily life, basically.
The very third pillar, it's more about keeping it transparent. I think one of the biggest problems that we face, in fact, we were working with one of the healthcare industries, and one of the use cases was that, yes, you have to go through research papers and identify the key findings out of it. Now, the problem is that any large language model, if you go through it, it will hallucinate. It won't let you know that what the steps are, but it will make up something and give it to you, which pretty much works counterproductive, because what you are looking for is summary of that particular research papers and output. And now AI is corrupting that output through its own hallucinations. And that is where this whole transparent AI comes into play. The way these AI systems needs to be developed is more around that how it needs to be stage by stage, looking into that why it is taking a particular step, why it is giving a certain recommendation or why it is giving a certain output, and is there a reference to that particular output. So what at the end of the day we are doing is that in order to get the summary or the output of that particular large research paper, it has been broken down into series of steps where AI is there at multiple of these steps, talking about that where the things are getting derived, how they are getting derived, how they are being organized, grouped, and how a particular decision has been formed, and then it gives you a particular decision. So it also gives a human pretty much the whole control that if they want to change the output for considering that there are certain factors which are not given in the paper, but that is where you want to give a particular context or a weightage to look for a particular segment, then that is where you can put it up. And it would, the AI would pretty much adopt accordingly and will give you an output. So that is the whole reason why the whole transparent AI becomes very important, and it's no longer a black box where you're just putting in and getting an output and you really don't know what happened inside.
Exactly. And the auditability part, which is basically um, what we touched upon before, was governance, right? For small, medium, large businesses, governance is becoming more and more important. Compliance is, always in executives, offices, asking for details, for answers. So regulation-heavy industries, they really need this to be part of the system so that it's not uh, unexplainable. So AI made a decision. You can't just say, "Hey, it's AI." So we are still responsible for making it answerable to everyone. Um, Now, let's talk about all of these best practices and thought process behind using AI or implementing AI, right? Um, what it tells us is that AI cannot be looked at just um, as a toy. It has to be part of your solution, and your approach to solving a problem should still stay the same. You still need to have the right architecture. You still need to have the approach to utilize AI as um, as a as you would do any other tool which is integrated in the system. Like, let's say in HR, if you have your HR tool, then that HR tool is designed in such a way that it follows a proper it follows an approach that can be scalable, that is secure, that is also placed on an infrastructure uh, which basically can be expanded on as need basis. Sometimes what happens is, because AI being AI, there are situations where the implementation experts, they feel that AI will we just need to utilize AI by querying the system, setting some prompts, and it'll give us an answer back, and we are good. But that's a mistake. We really, even if it's just and a couple of AI agents that you end up using, they really need to be scalable with your system usage. There has to be that accountability because that audit logs need to be properly available. Someone needs to be owning that system as well, because if a system, even if it's outside, if it's not sufficient to just say it's OpenAI who's managing it, but within your organization, like, how is AI being used? Someone needs to own that aspect as well. Just because it's AI doesn't mean that it can just be led to its own means and do whatever they need to do. So architect it with real infrastructure. Have retraining loops, have monitoring available. So it's not just a cool AI tool anymore. It's more, or it's just not a cool toy anymore. It's really, you're going to hit a wall really quickly if you do not take this solution design approach, just like you would do for any other system. So design it not in isolation, but as part of your overall solution architecture. And the solution architects need to become aware of how internally AI works. It's really important that you understand the roots of AI, not just the at the node level or root leaves level. Moving on. So
I think at the end of the day, I think
yeah,
the best part is that you would have an AI which would work for you 24/7. And with following all these principles, it's also leaving a paper trail. So what more you can ask for? Because then it becomes more closer to the human, though it might not still be able to get that complex decisions, but at least all the basic decisions with a paper trail and transparency. And you can't ask anything more than that.
Yep. So we talked about so much in terms of using AI, but we cannot leave out the training aspect of AI itself. You you have integrated AI. It's basically very easy to use these days, using APIs, webhooks, or whatever you need, or low code, no code tools. Now AI is in your organization. What's your next step? The next step is that you need to keep training it so that it gets better and better every day. And that's another aspect of your solution design, that you need to keep making sure that AI is not just static in one place at all the times. But how do you train whole AI? We have kind of come up with this process of dividing AI training into three aspects. So seeding is where you train AI to kickstart, to understand what you want to do with the with AI, because these LLMs, they have a lot of general knowledge, but you want to be able to specify to them what, in what aspect do you want to use AI's capabilities. So you need to train it from the very beginning in terms of the business context. Um, and and once that is done, so first of all, let's talk about how that is done. It could be done by feeding or giving the at the very initial stages foundational data, which is available in every organization. Maybe the SOPs that you've had, any guidelines, policies, documents, or even FAQs. Those kind of details that can give AI that overall context in which you're working. Once you have seeded and provided the that data on the pre-trained models, which AI is already working on, all the LLMs are working on, that business data, it starts understanding business specific data, and now it knows that when it's being asked a question or being prompted for a response, in what real paradigm it needs to answer that. And that's where the seeding data start. In terms of feeding the data, which is now AI has been set foundationally. How do you now go about using it on a day-to-day basis is by feeding it with real-time data. Because as data comes through or AI starts to spit out results, that those results can itself be used to train AI for future more honed in approach, so that it can be even smarter and smarter. It can grow smarter and smarter, just like a baby grows smarter from being an infant to a teen to an adult. So same way you feed it with real-time data, your workflows can provide that data. Someone can you can have the people, a human in the loop, to kind of say yes or no in terms of like if a response from AI has been good or not, any updates that happen, and all of this data based on the actions that have been taken or during the workflow, they they can be fed into AI for the next transaction and then the next transaction, and it just keeps on going on to make it better and better for future purposes. And that's where AI is different from other systems, because now it's basically becoming smarter. Having said all of that, it's very important that as part of training, there is also oversight and a human looking at the in the review cycle of the whole AI workflow. And where humans are great at is that they, over a period of time, they become SMEs, subject matter experts, and they are able to validate if AI's results are good or not. Now, eventually, maybe AI will be able to give better and better decisions, but um, until we are in that world, there has to be a human oversight, because that's the only way to ensure that an organization doesn't just lead to inaccurate results. It doesn't send out proposals which with the data that it is not supposed to, that compliance is still in the, is still satisfied. Everyone in all the stakeholders are given the right amount of information. So for that, a human oversight is really important. Tarun, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I think what the whole human in loop becomes very important because at the end of the day, we don't see, at least in near future, AI replacing humans, right? So, I mean, it could be a futuristic thing or it could be something else. But yeah, as of now, we don't see that. Humans are pretty much required. But how it is being required is that it can actually help so the AI can actually help enable humans in order to increase their efficiency, increase their productivity, and all the manual laborious work is something that can be done or taken up by AI. Even the basic decisions, which really doesn't require that much of the brain power or gray cells, that is again something that can be done by AI. But at the end of the day, human still is in the driving seat. So it's pretty much like a GPS example. You would have a GPS, and if you want to go from point A to point B, GPS would always give you that, yes, these are the directions that you should go ahead and take up. But at the end of the day, whether you have to take a left turn or a right turn is human decision. It's not a GPS decision, though it can direct you. But at the end of the day, human is smart enough to understand that, yes, this is right or this is wrong.
Yeah, and this is even more applicable to industries where regulations or sensitive areas exist, like hiring, compliance, finance industry, healthcare, everywhere. And that final call needs to be made by human so that it's again there is an ownership and uh, AI is being used as a system that is helping make the decisions based on large amount of data, but at the end, humans are still in control of what really is right and wrong. And there can be some gray areas in between, but humans have to be in the loop to ensure that AI gets better and better. Okay. Okay. AI in practice. We have talked a lot about the theoretical aspect of what AI's best practices, AI implementation best practices are, do's and don'ts around that. Now let's explain all of those discussion points in examples. While we'll go through specific case studies and some design elements, uh, but let's start by thinking about um, very simple example that all of us probably have gone through is resume screening. Now, we've met people or organizations who have tens of thousands of resumes lying around in the database, but whenever a new job comes in, they still have to go to various other data sources to get the latest result because, there is no way for them to access tens of thousands of resumes in the database. So where AI helps in such a case is by scanning hundreds of resumes in a very short period of time, matching it up with the skill sets needed, with the where the gaps are, and even detect if there's any inconsistencies in the experience that the candidate has mentioned in their resumes. That's hours and hours saved from your HR team.
And I think on top of it, if you look at the resumes, taking that CV resume example, most of the resumes these days are being built by ChatGPT itself.
Yeah.
So everyone is using ChatGPT to come up with beautiful resumes, right? And then when there's somebody that looking from the hirer perspective or from recruiter perspective who gets so many beautiful CVs, it becomes way too difficult at the initial stage itself to screen what is valid and what is not valid. And say that if you get thousands of those applications, obviously it's not humanly possible to go through each one of them for that particular job description on to define that which CV fits the best, right? And that is where a lot of these misses happen. And specifically with all these beautiful CVs, they'll start giving about, say, 8, 10 CVs to the hiring manager and so on. And without going through the whole list, that is one. Secondly, even those 8, 10, because they have been so beautifully written, they are able to deceive humans. And that is where, again, AI comes into play for assistance, because AI can pretty much detect that, yes, even though the CVs are written by ChatGPT, but how genuine they are. Do they talk about experiences? Do they have the relevant experience? Is it more of English that they have written, or is it something that it can tie back to the projects that they would have delivered, and they talk about in depth about those projects? So these are some hidden signals which again AI is able to detect and can determine that even though these 5 CVs are written by ChatGPT, only 1 and 2 are actually genuine, and rest 3 are more good English rather than a real experience that exists.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end, human still makes a judgment call, and AI gives them a narrowed field, but you make the hire. Okay, let's move on to AI in e-commerce, Tarun.
Yeah, so I think this is another case. I think everyone is aware of Amazon, and they have about thousands and thousands of products, right? And there are hundreds of websites like Amazon in each industry, whether it is e-commerce industry or online retail and others, where they are selling their products. Now, if you look at very closely, each of these products which are being sold on these sites, somebody is actually writing about those products. Now, when you have thousands of those products and that products are getting changed in every 1 month or 2 months time, it's very difficult to keep up to date, to keep on updating all this text which is there corresponding to those products. Because at the end of the day, if you don't give the true picture of that particular product, it can result in loss of sales, because then the consumer might not be interested because they are not getting what they want from that particular product. And the reason that they are not able to get it because the description is not proper. So that is where again AI comes to rescue. So one of the aspects which very much on the top is more about brand optimized product descriptions, where corresponding to each product, you can the AI can pretty much do the whole online research. It can do in-depth analysis. It can look into videos. It can look into reviews. It can look into images. It can look about the features and so on and so forth. And it can come up with beautiful description pages, which gives the true sense of what that product is all about to the end consumer, which anyways can result in increased sales. Also, how AI can help in retail and e-commerce is more about content enrichment and boosting conversations. So when we are talking about when somebody is talking to a particular e-commerce company, and when they are having those discussions, even the things like query responses or chat job bot responses, which we see pretty much common these days, are also pretty much driven through AI in order to have that kind of a conversation and give you the right products that you need based upon whatever you are describing. But in order to achieve that, AI itself should know that, yes, these are the 5 products that can cater to your needs. Now, in order to do that, there has to be a whole set of description that needs to be done for those particular products. And that is where, again, AI comes into play.
Yep. Now, let's take another use case, which is about not just marketing automation, but hyper-personalized marketing automation. And what it really stands for is that by understanding your customers better, AI can help in creating dynamic customer journeys on the basis of customer behavior, their interaction with you, their demographics, and segmentation itself. So, but in order to do that, basically AI can help, first of all, in segmenting your customers in ways that humanly, while you can do it for a smaller data set, but you as a human can leave out certain segments or patterns that AI can recognize. So by uncovering those patterns in lots of, like, across data sets, vast data sets, you are able to identify unexpected ways in which customers can be related to your marketing automation needs. And those groups are then sent messaging or content based on what AI can direct and help you with creating the content in such a way that it appeals to them and it's useful to them. It's not just about selling. Marketing is not just about getting customers in, but basically providing them with solutions that they are looking for, or sometimes they don't even know they're looking for. So that being able to predict what really applies to a certain segment of users, your ICP, you're able to ensure using AI, that an automated way of generating the content is based on your customer segment becomes easier. But this is not just as simple as putting something in ChatGPT and getting an answer. There is a whole system in place that you have to put in, that we will actually demo another system which will show how things can come into place to do this way. And not just about, now let's take this to the next level, right? Which is not just about segmenting your customers into certain groups. Um, AI can go and dive deeper into even one-on-one based conversations, because um, some kind of marketing message sent to a group of users does not mean that all of them will respond in the same way. So, based on each individual's response, AI will be able to hone in and dive deeper into their needs further and further, obviously, with humans watching over it, and AI being trained to be compliant with all the guidelines, especially the legal space, so that we are we are not hitting the territory which they're not supposed to. But that scalable one-on-one conversations is something that AI can help you achieve and completely transform your marketing into a vehicle where it's almost like sitting with a customer, asking about their needs, and being able to answer to them based on how they are responding to your needs. Um, so we have an approach through which this can be resolved. That workflow diagram basically shows that.
So just adding to what Harjot said, I think just summarizing into a very simple words, uh, or should I say very short words, is that you have tools like MailChimp and Apollos and others which can send personalized marketing emails to the people. But the thing is, much before that, there is the whole planning that needs to be done, talking about when these emails to be sent. Are there any festivals which are coming when these emails need to be sent? No, how does the thing, I mean, is it start of the year, mid of the year? What kind of services are there? What kind of age group should these services cater to, for young, for adults? What kind of gender, for male or females and others? So there's whole set of planning that happens earlier, based upon which those emails campaigns are being designed along with their brand voice. So each email that goes out has a brand voice of a particular of a particular brand, talking about that what should be the tonality, should it be friendly, humorous, or whatever. Now that whole initial planning, which was earlier done by humans, is now getting done by AI itself. So AI would look at what target segment you want to achieve to, what is the time of year, which are there any festivals which are coming up, which geography they are working, are they in a cold place or in a hot place, how does the services work accordingly, and then it comes up with a whole marketing plan, which then can be fed into Apollos and MailChimps in order to send out those personalized emails.
Yeah. So now let's talk
Sorry.
about one of the fun
Yeah.
examples. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So I think this was a very uh, funny case. So this was for there's a company which builds the music playlist for various stores. So if you have a food store, then there would be a specific playlist for it. So all that background music that keeps on coming. So if there is a cloth store, then there would be a separate playlist and everything. Right now, there were a set of humans which just keep on seeing based upon their taste, come up with that whole playlist. And it also depends upon which time of the year it is. Again, are there any festivals? Like if in India, if it's Holi, or if it's Christmas in US or other places, then yes, it would come up with pretty much those kind of themes. And then in what time of year it is and so on. So it all used to be again driven by humans deriving those playlists of songs. Now, pretty much AI considering all this, I think it's 30 odd parameters it takes, and it comes up with a curated playlist of current music, old music, hip hop, and others. It comes up with that music, and then that playlist is something which is being sent to human to now review and give a final go ahead. So the whole initial heavy lifting, what human was doing in order to come up with this particular playlist, is now being done by AI tirelessly, considering all those 30 parameters, and then human pretty much verifies it. And if there are changes that needs to be done, it does that change and gives that feedback to AI so that next time it doesn't make that mistake.
Yeah, and this applies to, any number of environments. Um, for example, Starbucks, when you go there, there's always that, you know, coffee mood kind of a music going on. While Spotify can customize your playlist on your own one-on-one level, but with AI, brands are now able to um, filter out content, do some behavioral analysis of their customers, detect some patterns based on the previous interaction of customers with their playlists. And based on that principle, that B2B content generation and recommendation can happen using AI, which is different from a one-on-one playlist creation. Um, yeah, and with that, I think we come to the end of this. Unless you have anything else to add, Tarun?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Where does that leave us? We are about 40 minutes. Yep. So I think we covered a lot, and hopefully you've learned about how AI can be useful by having different kind of an insight in the best practices that you can use to implement AI in an organization. Um, but seeing is believing. Picture is worth 1,000 words. Um, so what we have now up next is a quick live demo that shows how AI can fit directly into a business workflow, and a very, a quick showcasing of how things may work. And in order to do that, I guess I'll just have to come out of this presentation quickly. While I do that, Tarun, do you want to give more demo introduction? Let me
Oh,
figure this
sure.
out. Yeah.
So while you're bringing that recruitment demonstration, what
Yeah.
Harjot is going to show you is the real problem that most of the recruiters face, or any hiring person will face. Again, this is one of the examples. There are many such examples like those, but something that all of us can relate to. So whenever that hiring is being done, they have about hundreds of those CVs. And as mentioned, most of these CVs are now being written by ChatGPT itself. So how does a human start differentiating between the good ones and bad ones? And is also going through all the CVs that has come to it. So because last thing you need is that you lose out on a good candidate, and bad candidate is the one that gets selected, right? So you don't want to take out that chance, and you want to go through all these 100 CVs and others. And that is where we had built up a system. It is more of a microservice architecture based, which means that even though there's a UI, what you see in front, but that is not always the case. Most of the companies would already have their ATS system or hiring management system and others. So the AI system pretty much plugs in to your already existing systems. Or if you don't have any such system, then you can use this particular UI in order to do it. But UI is more like just a front end, where everything is sitting behind with all the engine and everything is sitting behind. That's why it's so disassociated that even if you have any existing system, it can pick up the CVs from there, can perform quick screenings, and then can give you the results.
Yep. Yeah. And the whole point is that while there is a front end, just like with any system, um, the way to connect to the back end, there's plenty of ways you can do it, but one of the ways that we use is low code, no code tools, and this is basically showing how vast can the workflows be behind the scenes. So with each click and action, there could be a different workflow being generated or called for, and that webhook leads to specific sections of this workflow getting executed. And most of this, if we really dive deeper into it, have like AI component uh, as part of the workflow. And at the same time, with all the executions that happen, there is always there's always the auditability aspect. So if user A uploaded hundreds of CVs and ran a few screenings and searches, all of that is kind of documented in the system. So this is one way of implementing using the best practices in mind, using a very simple approach. But this looks simple because you can visualize the workflow, but behind the scenes it's all the same thing. Like there's code, lines and lines of code, um, made built with the assistance of our developers. But overall, the point is that we can. Uh, this is more of a pictorial representation of how things can look for a system which is as simple as hiring in the front, but at the back end they can be like so many things going on using AI. Like each one of this section in yellow are AI driven.
I think, in fact, at the end of the day, what Harjot also mentioned earlier in the presentation, it's more about integrating AI frictionlessly in your business process. So what you see behind is nothing but series of business process, and then there are points where AI is being integrated. So one such business process is that whether you have already existing system like ATS or recruitment management system, or you are working on Word documents or Excel sheet, right? Either way, the process would be that you will go through each one of those CVs, will scan that CV compared to that particular job description and would say yay or nay for the interview, that is for the next round or so. And that is
Yeah,
where, again, this AI comes into play. That is where it is frictionlessly integrated into this particular process, where it takes those job descriptions, it takes those CVs, it runs through that what will work and what won't work, what are the things positives and what are the negatives, the transparency being built in, talking about that, why do you think that this CV would work for this job description and this won't work for a particular job description. So all those aspects is something that AI pretty much takes care, and that pretty much seconds the fundamentals that AI needs to be transparent. It needs to give the reasons why it is taking a certain decision, and at the same time, it needs to be frictionless for the end user. So for that, it's pretty much seamless. Earlier, they were opening up files in a PDF file. Now they put it in the system and they still get those results and output.
exactly. By the way, this is not just a made up system. This is like a real product. Uh, so if you are interested, go to this website. Um, and that's mainly it for in terms of the content we wanted to share and our thought process and our design methodology. Um, Maybe it's time to open up for any Q&As. I think David, you've been gathering some Q&As, right? So is there anything that came up we should answer? Yeah, I think David, are you there?
Only David is on mute. Huh?
Possibly he's talking to himself. All right, maybe let me try to unmute him. Well, I'm not able to. He's the organizer.
Okay.
Anyways, I think David, if you're not able to unmute yourself, maybe.
Maybe I can see some of the questions through the
Okay,
chat.
okay.
One says that what are these agents and how do they come into play? So, Harjot, would you like to answer that?
No, I think you can go ahead. Let me figure out what's happening
Sure.
with David.
Okay, so talking about the agents itself, that yes, agents are pretty much like humans, but yes, with a particular specific given task. Like, I mean, the easier way to understand is that analogy. So, like in a particular company, you would have somebody who is doing HR work, somebody who is doing procurement work, somebody who is doing sales work, and so on. Similarly, you can give the task to these AI systems, which can do those specific work for you and can give you the specific results. Like there could be an AI which would do a research and a lot of secondary research. So it will go out to the internet, it will Google it out, those things, and it will give you the required results of what you want. So say if I'm looking for a particular company which builds roof, then I'll just do it on the Google and it will automatically go to the Google, find out those, it will check out the reviews and will give you the results. So this is what agents is all about. And for any system to work frictionlessly, Like you said, I mean, ChatGPT is always the easiest, but then it gives you a lot of those hallucinations, different tool altogether. It doesn't get the required context window, and it cannot give you the answer in totality because the context window is pretty much limited. So, like any other system, these agents pretty much work with your existing set of systems, keep
Yeah.
on gathering the information, get the context, and give you the required output that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, AI agents um, are a collection of steps using AI that can act on its own, make its own decision, and lead to a final result. There's another question, and
Hey,
I
George.
think,
So we have another question here.
yeah.
So with AI agents making up their taking in data, making decisions, taking actions, how are you able to make sure that and take control of AI hallucinations?
Mm, that's actually a great question. Um, so hallucinations. What are hallucinations? First of all, let's talk about that. Is where AI being AI, it's intelligent, right? So it starts AI starts putting in its general knowledge when it responds to a prompt. And in certain cases, it's fine. You want it to be going, think outside the box and give you answers and play around with your life. And you're asking about, hey, I need this recipe. It's great when it thinks out the box. But for consistent operations of an organization, you can train AI to stop doing that, to have some guidance and guardrails around it. Now, how do we do that is by ensuring that we set up AI in a way that the temperature is kept to a minimum. We are setting the right parameters on AI so that it understands only the context of the question being asked of it and not think outside of it. So there are ways you can train, and that basically is part of the seeding and feeding part of AI, where you can ensure that the knowledge AI gains, is from what you tell it to do from. But I'm sure, Tarun, you would have other things to add here as well.
Agreed. So, hallucination, like you rightly said, it's more about cooked up stories that AI would come up with.
Yeah.
And that's where it again draws parallel to human. When you don't have an answer, you start cooking up the stories, right? So, that is where AI also plays its part. But we as human, definitely, we are not looking for those hallucination or cooked up stories. We require based upon facts. So, there are ways to go about it. But one of the ways which has also worked along where you don't have a reference material and you are just asking a question of AI is peer-to-peer. So again, drawing an analogy back to humans, like if I'm saying something, am I saying correct or not? And if third person wants to validate that, he would still go ahead and ask Harjo or David or somebody else that what Tarun is saying, is that really a fact? Either you would say no, or you'll say yes, or partial correct, or whatever it is, right? Same is something that even works with AI. So if you would have something like ChatGPT, OpenAI giving you a particular answer, but it is getting verified by Claude, by Gemini, and other transformer models, it can pretty much validate that whatever is being told, is it a cooked up story or is it something that is coming out of facts? So this is also one of the many ways through which hallucination is something that is being checked, and specifically for the places where you don't have any reference material that you can verify with, but you are just asking out of the box from the AI, like which is the capital of France. So the one AI can say pretty much as Washington, and then other AIs can say, no, it's wrong. It's actually Paris. And that is where you come to a decision that, no, it hallucinated. This is something which is right.
Yeah, and it's really important to control that uh, when you are relying on AI so much. Um, and I think that brings us to the end of the Q&A. Is David, do you have anything else?
One last question.
Hmm.
So how are we able to ensure transparency in our AI systems, straight from development all the way to the deployment?
Yeah. You're the technical expert, Tarun. I'm going to leave it to you.
Okay. So I think the way to have that transparency is not just to believe what is coming straight away out of the box from AI. Like I said, it could be hallucination, or it could also be the perceived context, which could vary. So say for human, let's take an example that how is this machine working, right? Is temperature really important, or is current flowing inside this particular machine is important, right? Now, as a human and with all my knowledge, I might say that it is current, but with limited context that AI might have, they might say temperature, right? And it will come out with an answer temperature, and it will base all its calculation around it. So the point that I'm coming to is that AI has limited information, and you need to be pretty much aware of what's coming out. And one of the ways is breaking down into it. So let's take an example itself. When we talk about that machine, which is more important? Is raising of temperature, or is it withdrawing more current more important? And can you start explaining me step by step that how it is going through? So that is where AI starts giving you each and every step and determining where human can pretty much go ahead, or another AI system can audit that through these 10 steps being provided, apart from those specific techniques like chain of thoughts and others from prompting, other AI can pretty much look at those outputs, the series of steps that has been performed, and whether is it right temperature, or whether the current should withdrawn, it should be right. Right. So this is the kind of transparency as well as auditing that can be done on the AI system. Now, what I talked about is a very, very basic, simple example, which might not be the reality itself. But however, if we start talking about much more complex system, then there are series of contexts and things that it needs to refer to before it can come out with an output. And that is where breaking down that whole huge step into multiple small steps, which are auditable by human or by a third-party system or an AI system, is something that makes it transparent.
Yep. Basically being able to audit or review AI actions. And the more you break it down into smaller steps, the more visibility you'll have. It's again about common best practice in any system. You need to have enough audit logs and trails. Uh, so, if, for example, you send a resume for screening to AI and just expect an answer back after the whole review, then there will be a lot of like opaque steps which will be in between. Now, instead of that, you tell AI that, hey, uh, take this, now grade this for this aspect of the job description or the top 3 factors that the client wants. Now, when you break that down into the series of steps, you are able to now see at each step what did the AI think, and if it somehow hallucinated, and this happens during the training process, if it's hallucinated, you are able to kind of pinpoint which specific step did AI get confused on. But yeah, that's it. Um, I think we are reaching the top of the hour. David, anything else we should cover in terms of Q&As?
That pretty much covers all the questions we have from our
Okay.
audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call, and we hope to see you again in our future webinars. For any questions, please reach out if needed. Thanks all.
Thank you. Okay.